Welcome to Let's Get Into It. I am your host, Sharron Higgins. Let's Get Into It is a safe space to have real conversations that are meant to uplift, encourage, and let you know you are not the only one dealing with life. Each episode of Let's Get Into It is designed to provide illuminating and thought-provoking information on a variety of topics. In fact, no topic is off limit. If you would like to see a topic discussed, please feel free to make a recommendation. My special guest and I will have a great time discussing topics that the mainstream media wouldn't dare discuss. We will bring these conversations to you with an open mind, respectfully, from different perspectives, and most importantly, with love. Thank you for joining me and my special guest. Now, let's get into it. Hello. How are you all doing on this wonderful Friday Eve? I am Sharron Higgins, and this is Let's Get Into It. I am so thankful that you all are joining me today. I'm excited about today's show. We're going to talk about something that I'm sure many of us have encountered throughout our careers. So, just a couple things before I introduce my guests. So, the first thing is my special guest is somebody that I'm very familiar with, and someone who is going to join me in this conversation, and we're just going to get into it. Also, I want to remind you that at the very end of the show, I will be doing my special segment called What the Hell? There's so many things going on in the world that I'm sure you have said to yourself, what the hell, many of times. And so today I will go ahead and bring on my special guest, Dr. Sharron Credle, also known as my big sister. And so,
Hello, everyone.
welcome, Sharron. Welcome. So first, I want to tell you all a little bit about who Sharron is. I asked each of my guests to send me a bio, but because I know Sharron, I'm not going to even bother with reading her bio. I'm just going to tell you who she is. She is a powerful, Black, educated woman. She is a role model to her younger sisters. She is from the South Side of Chicago, and she lives in Maryland with my fabulous brother-in-law, Dr. Ira Cradle, and they have a daughter and a grandson who calls me Auntie Diva. And so, Sharon is by profession an educator, and she has been in education for over 30 years. And she moved from being into the classroom to being an administrator, and then also moved to the collegiate level as an administrator. And she was also very instrumental in the human capital profession. She worked in that profession for many years and continued to do so to this day. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my sister, Dr. Sharron Cradle.
Hello. What a great introduction. I think that's the best introduction I've ever had.
Well, that's because I know you. So today, before we really jump into it, I want to give you a little bit of background about what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about not the messenger, but the message. And the message is that message that came from Monique, the comedian, when she was on Club Shay Shay. In that interview, Monique had a message that I believe got lost because she was the messenger. But it didn't get lost on me because I have experienced similar things throughout my career. And so, what I'm talking about is, that professional journey. As African Americans, we know that we have to be better than the rest. not by a little bit, by a whole lot. We have to be extremely talented, extremely available, extremely cooperative, what they call a team player. We're told not to burn any bridges. And even though the other people start the fire on the bridge, and we're just supposed to walk through the fire and accept whatever it is that they dish out to us. And oftentimes throughout my career, I felt like the organizations I worked for benefited from my talents more than I benefited from my talents. And each time when I got to the point where I felt like they were benefiting more than I was benefiting, I knew that it was time for me to move on. Now I know in some occupations, and some people, depending on their personalities, are a little apprehensive about moving on from an organization because they may be afraid of the unknown or what the other organization is going to offer them or not offer them. It never deterred me. I figured I'll just go over there and meet some new people. And when I decided I didn't want to be around them anymore, I'll just move to the next place. And so throughout my 32 years of federal service, I worked at 7 different federal agencies. And so that gives you a little bit of flavor about how much I moved around because I was not benefiting from my talents. And so one of the things Monique talked about is when she was, you know, promoting the film, and they wanted her to go internationally and promote it without additional pay. And my mentor, Margaret Johnson, sent me this book. And in that book, it stated, and this just was so profound to me, and it just really captured my attention to the point where I felt like I got everything I needed from the book. It said, if a job offer you more money, and that additional money costs you more of your time, more of your energy, and more of yourself, then it's not worth it. And that's when I knew, well, I knew 5 years ago, well, I knew 30 years ago that I was going to retire, but that solidified it for me. And so throughout this hour, I'm going to share with you kind of what my experience was on my way out of organizations and why that was just so profound to me and how it kind of helped shape my decision to go ahead and walk away. So, with that being said, Sharon, you want to let's talk through that piece of it. About working for organizations that benefit more from your talent than you benefit from your own talent. And so I'll start with this. When I worked for one particular organization, I won't call them out. Um, I was at the top of the GS grade level, and there was a vacancy for an executive position. And I oftentimes was relied upon to act in that position whenever the person who occupied the position was out of the office. I was also the go-to person. And throughout my career, I was referred to as the cleanup woman. And so organizations had I my journey led me to organizations that had lots of challenges and needed to be fixed. And so that was my strength. And so in that particular organization, once that position as an executive became vacant, I applied for the position, I interviewed for the position, and I interviewed extremely well. And I had been working for the organization for several years. And so everybody knew me, everybody relied on me. Every time a part of the organization was broken, they would put those people in that part of the organization under my leadership. They wouldn't take anything off my plate, but they would just add to it. And so when that position became available, everybody assumed that I would get that position. Well, lo and behold, I did not. They gave it to a way less qualified white man. And what they told me was, it's not your turn yet. And so I was devastated, right? Because I was like, so you want me to work for somebody where I have to continue to do all of the work, and then he gets all of the credit and he gets the pay and he gets the bonuses. and he gets the title. Not that I care about a title. They could have called me Susie. I would have been okay with that. But he got all of the accolades and all of the benefits from being in the position. But I was going to be relied upon to do all of the work and to train him in his job. And so, what I decided to do, little did they know, I had already interviewed for a position and was selected for another position. And so, I was just telling the people who selected me for the new job, hold on, let me see if I get this job. And if I do, I'm not going to come to you. But if I don't, I'm out. And so when I didn't get the position, I distinctly remember going into my supervisor's office and sitting down and closing the door and saying to her, that um, I had something I wanted to share with her. And she was like, "Oh, I know." And I was like, "Okay." And she said something like, "You came here to tell me such and such, such and such." I said, "No, actually, that's not what it was. I came here to tell you that I offered another position and Friday is my last day." Because in the government, it's protocol, not necessarily by agency policy or anything, but it's protocol to give the agency at least 2 weeks notice, right? And I never really bought into that protocol. So I was like, no, actually, I'm telling you that I got a new job and like Friday is my last day. Then they went into panic mode, right? They wanted to know what can they do to keep me. Nothing, because if you wanted to keep me, you could have selected me for that position that I was more than qualified for, and that position that you often relied on me to act in, and keep the organization running. So, no, at this point, there's nothing you can do for me. And so, Sharon, I will ask you to share a part of your journey with us where you felt like, the organization was benefiting more or wanted you to work for the same money, but give you additional responsibilities.
So, what I would like to say, I think this is such a timely conversation, and I know you opened up with Monique, but then we have Fonnie Willis, we have Taraji, right? And so you have these incredible Black women who are professionals who are really kind of saying some of the same things. And we know that everybody's experience is different. My experience is not with the federal government. My experience is with public education, higher ed. That's where I get mine from. And then there are different rules and laws that govern each one of those. But one of the things that I like to talk about is, you know, what I've learned over the years is that, we have to set our own professional expectations. And I know that, everybody has to work, and that's just how it is. And we oftentimes look for career advancement, right? We don't, because of what we bring to the table. We are highly skilled professionals. We know that we can help an organization realize its vision and its goals. But sometimes our expectations don't match the expectations of the organization. And so that is a very interesting and intricate conversation. The other piece of that is that we go to work and we put our we give them our blood, sweat, and tears. And
Hmm.
I don't think that we often realize that it's not our organization. We just work there, right? And I think once we change our mindset, and why do we need to change our mindset? Because it's like you said, we feel like we've done A, B, C, D, and E. We've checked all the boxes. So now they owe us something, right? And I've just come to understand that organizations really don't owe us anything. Our career is in our hand. It's our career. And so if we're not getting what we need from the organization, then of course, you do what you did. You have, a strategy. You have something in your back pocket that you can move to. And it's not about anger or anything. It's just that whatever you have done for this organization, that time has ended, right? And so I've worked in K-12 in numerous positions: teacher, counselor, vice principal, supervisor of special ed, supervisor of HR, director, acting director for DE&I, on the board's negotiations teams. And what I can say is those positions and those experiences in multiple locations and jurisdictions really helped me build my professional muscle, because you're going to, run into people who are going to challenge you, who's going to be threatened by you. And it's not for them, it's for you to build your professional muscle, so that when you're faced with these types of dynamic situations, you know how to maneuver and navigate it, so that when you leave or when that situation is resolved, you still have your dignity intact, period. And so I think there are so many things that can be discussed around, the common threads that ran through the conversations of Monique, Taraji, and Fani, right? And what our experiences are related to that. And so sometimes you have to speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and trust and believe. Organizations don't want you doing that, right? Because they, most organizations, they want you to come, they say they want you empowered, but I'm not so sure about that. I think we're getting better about the empowering piece, but only to a certain extent. And so that's what I have to say about the opening part of that. It's not our organization. These our professional journeys should really help us build our professional muscle and really help us solidify who we are as professionals and why are we there, right? Because we looked at the job description, we interviewed, we wanted to go to that organization. So why, right? And if it's not connected to your purpose, then, I think we have to ask ourselves some different questions.
So it's interesting you would say it's not our organization, because that was my motto my last 10 years of working. It's not our, and I used to say that to my team. It's not our organization, right? And so I get that piece of it. I also get the piece of, you have to take ownership over your own career. Which I had to do many, many times. And I know that the organization didn't owe me anything. But what I will say about that is, at a minimum, the organization should have rewarded me for all of the work and all of the effort and all of the extra things that I did. I'm not talking about the job that I applied for and I accepted. I'm talking about the work in which I did not apply for, was not within the scope of my job. And yet I still did it for many years, and, multitasking, managing 3 different organizations for the same pay. And so to me, if I was running an organization, I would then reward that person with a promotion, because they didn't sit back and just say the organization owed me. They worked for that promotion. And so, but that's just not how it works all the time. And I get
No, it
that.
doesn't. And when I talked about advocating for yourself, when I do my professional coaching, I ask people, have you asked a question, right? Have you sat down and talked about your worth, right? Have
Absolutely.
you sat down and said, look, I'm doing 3 jobs. And that's my story, right? I'm doing 3 jobs. This is what I believe I am worth. How are you going to compensate me? Or how are you going to support me? Because this is not sustainable. And really finding your voice and creating that confidence to say, this is not working for me. It's not sustainable. And I am doing 3 people's jobs. So the compensation really, I think, needs to be reconsidered. And because if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to have those conversations, some organizations, because they're shorthanded, budget, whatever, whatever the reason is, if we accept and say, yes, we're going to do it, they're going to let us do it. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
They're just
Absolutely.
Gonna do it. And we have to learn, and believe me, it's taken me years to really understand that, really learn, really advocate, really knowing my worth, right? And so I don't go to the table and say, well, can you just give me? No, let me tell you about my research, what I've done, and this is what it is, right? And I think, because someone used this term the other day that I think is fascinating. They said, we are engaged in emotional suicide on these jobs. Just think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about your mental well-being and your emotional well-being, if you believe that you deserve more than what you are getting because of the product that you are putting out there, I say there is nothing to lose by having a conversation. Now, whether or not they move on it is a whole different thing, but now you have put them on notice, right? That this is where I am in life. This is what's happening. And I think I deserve more than that. So let's talk about that, because in some organizations, I'm assuming the federal government is the same, because you all have a GSA pay scale, right?
GS.
GS pay scale. In private industry, some organizations don't have a pay scale, right? But they do have, a minimum and a maximum salary, right? And so most organizations, and this is what I want people to understand, they pay you middle of the market, right? They're not trying to pay you the top dollars,
Right.
when you come into an organization. So you have to understand that, right? And then negotiate for your worth, because the only thing they can do is say no, right? In terms of that salary. So I think that we don't always understand our worth. And then we look to the organization to tell us what our worth is. And I think that's backwards. I think we should go in, establish our worth, and then request what we need to be successful in that position.
I've never had, issues advocating for myself. Um, and of course, the federal government work a little bit different than private industry in terms
Right.
of money. But I
Yes.
will tell you, for the last, I got a GS 15 in the federal government when I was 37. That is young. That is just young, period. And it's particularly young for African Americans. And so, from 37 to 56, that's almost 20 years. I worked for hardly no extra pay. I went up the steps.
Yeah.
The increments when you go up the steps is so minimal that, by the time they, tax it and do all of the things that they're going to do to it, you're only going to get $20, right? And
Yeah.
so for the last 20 years of my career, my overall pay probably only increased by $10,000. And that was before taxes.
Wow.
And
That's
so,
different in the private industry, because
absolutely.
it's not, funds are not being appropriated by the Congress. And so, most of these organizations are for profit, or taxes, being, so it's a little different. And the understanding that is important. So there is a little more wiggle room to negotiate. And even in some public education settings, you could go, be on the scale and still only go up, like you said, by $10,000 in a few years. And
Right.
so it depends on what your role is, the school system you work for, how the contract was negotiated, and looking at that compared to the resources that's available in your area.
Right. And so, for me, being in the federal sector at that point, I was so invested. I already had,
Correct.
so many years in. And so at that point, it didn't make sense for me to walk away from the federal
Correct.
government. And
Exactly.
so I knew that it was time for me to move from that organization, because the one time that they had that they could have promoted me for something that I earned and had demonstrated that I can perform at that level, and they trusted me to perform at that level, for them not to acknowledge that in such a way that it benefited me, it was time for me to go. Like, there's nothing for us to talk about. Even the last agency that I worked for, I go into this organization, I promise you, I went in there thinking I got 2 years and 3 months to work and I'm done. 8 months, and people, I would talk to people and everybody would say, "Oh, it's wonderful and great. Everything is wonderful and great." So I was like, "Oh, this is a great place to end my career. Everything is wonderful and great." And then the bottom fell out. We took the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey and the results came in. And at the same time, we did an internal survey called Customer Service Satisfaction Survey, and the bottom fell out. And I was like, well, I thought everything was wonderful and great. And then that's when everybody wanted to start telling me how things were so far away from wonderful and great. I was like, wait a minute, I'm on month 10. What do you mean it's not wonderful and great? The first 8 months, everything was wonderful and great. The supervisor was a terrorist, right? She was my supervisor, but she was a terrorist and she was terrorizing not only the team that worked below her, she was terrorizing the entire agency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they allowed it because most of the people in leadership were non-minorities and they were afraid that if they dealt with this African American terrorist, that she would file a complaint against them. And so
Mm-hmm.
and like the first year and a half, I think she understood that I wasn't the one, and so I didn't have any issues with her. But one day we were in a meeting and she started yelling, and I started looking around like, who's she talking to? Now it was other people in the meeting besides me and her, but I was like, and the other people that were in the meeting all worked for me, right? And so they were all looking at me because probably knew that I wasn't feeling it. So I didn't say nothing in the meeting. But the minute that meeting was over and we hung up that phone, I called her so fast on the video. I said, "Let's talk about what just happened." Right? I had to address it. I said, "Don't ever, ever yell when I'm in a meeting. Now, you could do that with these other people and get away with it. I'm cool with that. But don't do it to me because I'm not the one." And then, she, tried to make an excuse talking about how she was frustrated. That might be true, but that's not how you handle your frustration. And when I hung up the phone from her, I called her boss and I said, "Let me tell you what just happened because I want you to hear it from me." And
Mm-hmm.
I told him what happened. And he said, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?"
Oh, wow.
Not in a sarcastic way or
Oh,
anything, in a way that he
okay.
be helpful. And I
Mm-hmm.
told him, "I don't want you to do anything about it because I already took care of it." And
Mm-hmm.
then I sent a email to the chief of staff and I told her the same thing.
Yes.
And she picked up the phone and called me and she, tried to talk me through it. And I was like, I don't need to be talked through it. I'm already telling you, I'm not putting up with it. Now y'all can let her, terrorize the rest of the agency if y'all want to, but I'm just not here for it. And so they not only want you to do all of these extra duties, they also want you to put up with bad leadership.
Well, yeah. So I was going to talk about a few things, and I think it really connects back to Monique, Fani Willis, and Taraji. This whole idea of professional decorum.
Hmm.
So there is professional decorum for some, right? And like I like the way you started the conversation about let's think about the message and not the messenger. And
Hmm.
so what ends up happening, people become so frustrated at work. And I'm not saying that that was that lady because she was, projecting that onto you all. But people become so frustrated at work. Sometimes it gets a little heated, right? And so, and you, when you go into that vein, it's difficult to come back from that, right? Even that manager, it should have been difficult for that manager to come back from that behavior, because of this professional decorum that that's touted over your head, right? And no matter what is happening to us in organizations, some of us are expected to just smile, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
um, Take it and and be okay with it. And so I always believe that it's important for us as employees to know the HR policies for ourselves,
Hmm.
right? Because most organizations have HR policies about professional conduct, right? Mutual respect, something on respect, what type of what our values say, right? That we value everyone, we're going to keep everyone.
Hmm.
So we should always know what those policies are, build relationships with the HR department. Every time you go to the HR department, it should not be just to complain, right? Go in and sit down with someone in HR and just say, I'm just more interested maybe in learning this, policy. What does this mean? What does it look like? How do we implement this in our organization? And so, um, the conversation around the three women that I mentioned is this professional decorum. So I'm not so sure what people are expecting from them. If you stop and you listen and just, forget about, the tears or the
Perceived
voice.
impression.
Yeah, exactly. And listen to what they're saying. They're all saying, doing similar things. So Fonnie Willis, for example, Fonnie is a professional. She's an expert at what she does, right? And so her character was being assassinated, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were lying on her. She knew they tried to make it seem like she was on a trial. And so she was angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was angry, and she had just had it, and she had decided that not today, right? And so
Right.
some of us get into that moment, not today. And I'm going to set the record straight, and I'm going to correct you, and I'm not going to allow you to do this to me. And I'm just take it, right? Taraji talked about how every time she has to
Renegotiate
she
for
had to negotiate or audition, and it's like she's starting at the bottom every time, right? And so there's no recognition. This goes back to what you said. There's no recognition of her professionalism, right? Her experience,
her accomplishments.
her accomplishments. They're treating her like, no, that doesn't matter. You need to start at the bottom. And then Monique has been talking about this for years,
Mm-hmm.
right? About, wanting her to work without pay. Where they do that at, right? And you need to accept this. You need to be okay with this. And it's good to see people speaking up about their work.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to see people putting it out there around, this is just not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And so, and sometimes we get into these jobs and we think that that's the only job in the whole wide world. Mm. Yeah, we're expected to do some things, we expected to come and perform, do our jobs, right? But with that, we should be in a culture that's safe. You talked about leadership, right? Having leaders who understands their role as leaders, right? And helping us to grow. You talked about Margaret. Margaret was a sponsor. Many of us have never had a sponsor, a mentor, or a coach.
Right.
It's like we're out there just swimming, in no direction, and learning as we go and bumping heads and finding ourselves in these tough situations because we've never had a sponsor or a coach or a mentor. So the world of work can be complicated no matter where you are. It can bring you a lot of joy, right? If you are doing exactly what you're passionate about. And your well-being connected to all of that is critical. It is just critical. If you find yourself in a place that you are drowning, you have to reevaluate, right? What's going to be best for you moving forward.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And speaking of Fonnie Willis, I will tell you, I've had a couple of Fonnie Willis moments in my career. Because I'm just not the one. I just want to come to work, do my job, and go home. I don't need all the extraness. And there are people in every organizations that are allowed to mistreat people, talk to people any kind of way, and they make excuses for these people. And so I worked for an organization who that person was our general counsel. And he was flipping at the mouth. He was just a lot,
Mhm.
and they allowed it to happen. And so one day I remember I was sitting in his office. He was sitting on one side of the desk. I was sitting on the other side of the desk. And he said something to me. I was sitting back at first with my legs crossed like Fonnie Willis was, and I leaned up on top of that desk and I looked him square in his face. I said, "Let me tell you something. You could talk to anybody else how you want to, but I refuse to allow you to talk to me in this manner. So here's what I'm going to suggest. I suggest you check yourself and never ever talk to me that way again."
Mhm.
He was surprised. He was taken aback, right? And I got up and I walked out and I walked straight to my supervisor's office and told him what happened because I'm going to always be the first one to tell it. And it got up to the, upper leadership, and they made him apologize to me.
Mhm.
Now, they had never made him apologize to anybody else before, right? And so you do have to speak up for yourself. And yes, they're going to label you. Once you speak up for yourself, they're going to label you. You're either going to be too aggressive,
Mhm.
going to be the angry black woman or the angry black guy. They are going to label you in a negative way because you spoke up for yourself. I
Right.
don't care about labels, just like I don't care about titles. You can call me whatever you want to, as long as my check ain't short, we good. And so we do have to speak up. And, sometimes you do have to, take a risk, right? When you're speaking up for yourself,
Mhm.
because it could be a risk. Because once you fall out of good graces, I'm putting it in quotes, then, it's a whole different environment for you. And
Mhm.
so now your joy in coming to work and doing what you're being paid to do becomes contentious. You start, you're like withdrawing, and you start, letting it impact your well-being, your mental health, your, work-life balance. Because sometimes we get into that mode where we're going to show them all of that stuff. No, I knew then, once I took that step, that my next step had to be out the door,
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
can show you better than I can tell you.
Mhm.
And so the fact that, you all, as leaders created an environment where this person felt comfortable behaving in such a way, and you all weren't going to do anything about it. So why would I even stay in that organization? And
Mhm.
so we have to check our fears, and we have to make the decisions that's best for us. Just like organizations make the best decisions for the organization, we have to make the best decisions for ourselves. And I didn't have any issues doing that throughout my career. Um, I will tell you, sometimes you just got to have a Fonnie Willis moment.
What do you mean by that?
You sometimes you just gotta say what it is. You got to say what it is. You got to say how it impacted you, and you got to say what you will not accept going forward, so that everybody is put on notice. And this one in a different organization, this guy told me that I need to grow thick skin.
Mm.
When I
Mm.
tell you I leaned up on the table on him too, and when I got through telling him how I was from the south side of Chicago and had my head going like this and how thick my skin really is, and I'm gonna see how thick your skin is right now. Okay, yeah, he backed up, because like, who you talking to? And they try, they're when they see that we're talented, right? We're confident and we know our business, they get intimidated by that. And their intimidation somehow is supposed to reflect on you and who you are and how you move. And so I've been in so many situations where, the people that I worked for were intimidated by me. And I'm like, I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just trying to do my job. You said you wanted somebody to come in here and turn the organization around. That's what I'm doing. You have acknowledged that that's what I'm doing. And now you're intimidated because you think that I want your job. I don't want your job. I don't even want my job. I'm
Mm.
just here because for two reasons. One, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And two, I did not marry rich. Those are the only two reasons I'm here. And I'm only going to be here until it's time for me to go. And when you show me who you are, that's when it's time for me to go.
Well, the other thing, when so I've already talked about this emotional suicide that can happen with people working in very toxic organizations, right? The other piece is we have to learn communication discipline, and I think that communication discipline comes from you really having a clear understanding again of your worth, but also knowing your rights, right? Knowing what's available to you in the world of work and accessing that. And I think what happens sometimes is that when people have experiences at work, it's like you said, they go and they sit in their corner. They're like, I don't know who to trust. I'm not going to say anything. I
Mhm.
need a job, right? Which is rightful, rightfully so. I get it. But people are miserable, right? Miserable at work. And being an HR professional, one of the things I would always say to myself is I don't want to be in an organization where I am miserable. I don't
Mm-mm.
want to be that person. I don't want to, come to work and have to, walk on pins and needles, right? I just don't want to do that, because that's not joy, right? And some people get joy from work, but it's not a comfortable environment. And so I had to build again that emotional intelligence muscle, right? And communication discipline. Because there is, a way that you communicate your desires, your wants, and your needs. It
And,
is.
and there is, and and that sounds really, really good.
No,
But
but I'm
when
saying there is. I mean, and so,
no,
and
no,
I'm
no,
not
hold on,
saying
hear
that
me
there
out.
is a one way. I'm
No,
saying
no,
there.
no, I'm not talking about one way. Let me just hear me out. That
Mhm.
and that sounds really good, and 95% of the time you can practice that. But there's going to be those 5% of the time where your emotions are now involved, and you
Oh,
just really
absolutely.
you need to get
Absolutely.
people attention, just like Fonnie Willis
Absolutely.
got the whole world attention
Hmm.
because her emotions were involved at that point, and she had
Exactly.
taken all that she could. She had already practiced communication discipline. The people weren't listening when you see, they don't listen when you practice communication discipline.
I
They
still
don't.
think that she had communication discipline.
Oh
She
yeah.
was very matter of fact about what she was
Oh,
saying.
absolutely.
Oh yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. And so only thing I'm saying is when I talk about communication discipline, I'm talking about knowing that what you how you're protected in the world of work, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Know that, right? Knowing that you have done nothing wrong. You have done what you're supposed to do. And so when you go and have this conversation, you're really disciplined in that communication and not all over the place. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
some emotions involved in it, but you're still disciplined in what you're saying because you're coming with information, right? You're coming with information. You're coming with, identifying your worth. You're coming with whatever your demand is so that you can be successful in that work environment. So
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I worked in HR for 32 years, so I already knew all the rules, regulations. I was the one teaching it, training it,
Right.
helping supervisors, navigate the rules, regulations, how to do it, what not to do. All that I already knew, so I knew I was on solid ground.
Hmm.
And so it gets we just have to learn to speak up for ourselves and ask for what we want. And when the organization tell you no, maybe it's time for you to move on. We have a comment. Monica says, yes, they will target you. I had to learn not to take it personal. Yeah, it's not personal. It's definitely not personal. And that's why when it's time for you to go, tell them don't take it personal,
Can
right?
I say this? Can I say this?
Mhm.
I have a difference of opinion about it's not personal. I think it is personal. And I know what you mean when you say that, Monica, it's not personal. Oh, it's personal because it's your career,
Mm,
right? And so if you're not taking it personally and building that strategy for your career, then you're gonna find yourself, in situations constantly that people are, targeting you. So it
mhm.
is personal. It's personal from the standpoint that I know what I bring to the table. I'm going to continue to do what I have to do until I find an organization, right? And that I don't know if that will ever happen, but find an organization where I feel like I can thrive somewhat, right? And really showcase my talent. So for me, it is personal because it's all about my career.
Eric said, I learned that in the federal sector, few resources are dedicated to developing leaders, and that in the federal sector assumes that good technicians make good leaders.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's so true. And
Yeah.
that's probably the case. And when you then add in the younger generation coming in that has a sense of entitlement and everything is given to them so quickly, they come into the organization thinking that they are ready to take over the organization, and they don't have the technical skills, they don't have the leadership skills, they don't have the organizational skills, they don't have the maturity, but yet they expect to be advanced very quickly. And
Mhm.
so, there are many studies out there that show just because you know the rules, regulations, and laws doesn't necessarily mean or translate into you're going to be a good leader.
No,
And
no, no. And you're absolutely right. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he's absolutely
Eric,
right. That's an old story, right? And one of the things that I do in my business, the Dr. Sharron Credle Corporation, is I go into organizations and work with their leaders, because and this is what I say. People get promoted into these leadership roles, and sometimes they get promoted to a level of incompetence.
oh, absolutely.
And it is on the organization, it's on the organization now, right, to make sure that they are, putting in organizational development plans and strategies to make sure that they are training their leaders. And what ends up happening is that these organizations are moving so fast, sometimes they're not even thinking about it, they just want a body in the seat, right? They just want a
Right.
body in the seat. And then the person that's in the seat, they're now drowning, right? They're drowning, but they're trying to put on this, this front, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but, they asked me to sit here, so I'm going to do it because it's a promotion. Who's going to really turn down a promotion, right? And so
Right.
it's incumbent upon the organization as well as the person in that seat. And even if the organization is not going to develop you, there are so many resources out here,
That you
free.
can use to develop yourself. But
Exactly.
leaders don't do that anymore.
Exactly.
Right? They just get the job and just, settle into whatever toxic thought processes that they have and they roll with it.
Mhm.
Crush said, and no people skills.
No people
Um,
skills,
no
and
people
they don't
skills.
last long. And these people don't last long.
They just moved to another organization. They do what I call they fell up, right?
Mhm.
You don't have no
Mhm.
people skills, you didn't work out in this organization. So what happens as a result of that? You've run all of the good people away, and then you get another job that's a promotion. And so you go to the new organization and you ruin that organization with your no people skills, no leadership skills. And then what happens? You move to another organization and you get another promotion. Meanwhile, the people with the people skills and the skills and know, their work, they are struggling to get the promotion. I love this. Jan says strategic incompetence.
It is. It is
And
strategic competence. It is. And I call it, yeah. So I like that, Jan. And the other thing is too, is that when I work with organizations, where organizations stumble is that they don't have a clear vision and mission. And then when they put people in these positions, they don't explain to them, what is your role as the director of this? What is
mm-hmm.
your role, right? And then what is your role with, managing your team? What's your role? And a lot of leaders that I found, we have these intimate conversations. They really are just kind of confused about, okay, what is my role? And so helping leaders understand their role, I think, is critical. And understanding, you know, how they help to realize that vision for the organization through
Mm-hmm.
their employees, right? And making sure their employees get the resources that they need and really communicating effectively with their team. I like to call them their team to help. And so you're right. And a lot of leaders are not going to, go on their own because there are no expectations.
Right. And a
There
lot of
are no
times
expectations.
in most organizations, they have a vision statement, a mission statement, right? And they have goals, and some even, pretend to have a strategic plan.
Right. Right.
And so, but what those are not living, breathing documents. Those are just documents that somebody said we had to do. And so we did it to check the box. We put it on the shelf, and then we don't bring it out again until it's time to report on it. And then it's like, oh, well, what did we do? Oh, so there's never any communication cascading
Right.
down or
Mhm.
cascading up, right? And a lot of times the leaders don't listen to the people who do the work, who can tell them the best roadmap to get to where they're trying to go. They want to force a roadmap on you that's not going to work. And you already know it's not going to work. And then when it doesn't work, they don't ever circle back to you. They just make it harder because now you got to go back and do it the way you said that it could be done to begin with. So now you're doing double work for no reason, just because the leader think that because they're the leader that they have all the say and all the power, and they don't want to accept input. And so, that drives an organization down as well. And so, it's so many different things we could talk about, but here's
So let me say this. Let me interrupt you because this is critical to me. Um, leaders, some leaders often fail to cast their vision. They often fail to cast their expectations. They often fail to work with the team to develop, these realistic goals around that. And so when leaders fail to do that, then the people underneath them who are also leaders, right? Because they have a team of leaders, they find themselves just really trying to figure it out the
mm-hmm,
best. And so I always talk about these middle managers. Middle
mm,
managers are important for the organization, right? And
critical.
so they're critical for the success of organizations. And so you think about these middle managers and what they are there to do. And then the team, what is it that we're trying to do? And when you don't have the vision cast, you don't have the mission cast, you don't have the expectations, you don't have the goals. A lot of organizations find themselves in a difficult situation, because I truly believe that the mission is and the vision is just not something you put on paper.
Right,
It's not. the,
right.
the strategic plan really is what really moves you right throughout that organization, and should be that guidance and keep you focused on the work that is ahead of us. And so it's just very interesting, and that we're still here, we are in 2024, and you have people that say, well, the vision and the mission, that doesn't matter, the strategic plan doesn't matter. And I beg to differ, because I'm thinking, if you're not operating off of those, what are you doing? You just figuring
And
it
I'll,
out by osmosis? I mean, I don't know.
I'll take it one step further. You need a succession plan in place,
Oh, well,
right?
that's a whole conversation.
We organizations don't typically have succession plans in place. And so, we, as workers in organizations, middle managers are critical. We are the ones who make things happen in an organization. And oftentimes we find ourselves managing up.
And you should.
Or,
I think as a middle manager, you have a responsibility to manage up.
and I don't have no problem with that. But
Hmm.
when I'm managing up so much that
Yeah.
I might, that's too
Hmm.
much. Like,
Right.
we should be teaming up, right? And
Both.
and really, dealing, yeah, absolutely, and dealing with, the issues at hand. And I find that in a lot of organizations, they don't want to deal with the issues. They just want the work done, and that the quality suffers, the quantity suffers, everything suffer, everybody suffer, everybody's miserable, everybody's standing around talking about the supervisor and all of that good stuff. Hold on, Sharron. Crush said good leaders start with several core qualities that can't be taught. I completely agree. And also that certain personality traits are counterintuitive to being good leaders. Absolutely. And Ira said Elon actually executed several strategic plans since I graduated. I say this because of my relationship with the last two presidents. They are effective leaders who I personally witnessed exercise effective leadership. Well, I'm glad you had an experience to see that, Ira, because I will tell you, I really will say, in my entire 32 years, I had one great leader.
So let's examine this, what Daryl Crush was talking about. So you do know that there's various types of leadership, various styles
Oh,
of leadership,
absolutely.
depending on what your organization needs. Now, and so those qualities, I think I know what you're saying. You're talking about those innate things, like, just being respectful to people, right? How those types of things. But those things can actually, I don't know if they can be taught, but they can be set as expectations.
Oh, absolutely. How
And
do you
and
measure?
exactly. And we can say in our organization, we talk to each other we treat each other with mutual respect, right? What does that look like? And we're going
Mhm.
to model that. And I'm going to hold you accountable as your leader. I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Now, what ends up happening in situations like that, what can happen is that those people, they exit. They exit. What do they call it on stage? Exit left, exit right.
Right. Whichever way you want to go, get off the stage.
Right. Because in this organization, this is the type of leadership that we expect. And that's why I said, when leaders don't cast their expectations and cast their vision and model those things, you will have people who believe that it's okay to do some of the things that they're doing, or ask, employees, or try to rate employees negatively for coming in late, and they coming in late.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Not modeling the behavior.
right, and they have to model the appropriate behavior that's set by the culture of that organization. And so it's difficult. I see a lot of organizations who really have made a commitment to training their leaders. The lower level leaders, even the ones that have been in position for a while, right?
Hmm.
Those that are coming from outside into a new organization. So I see that happening, and I think the more organizations focus on that, I think, and then, diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's a whole nother conversation.
It surely is.
And really understanding, when you are wherever you work and you're in a leadership role, what is it that they really expect from you?
Hmm.
Because I had someone tell me, in this role, I don't need you to be a leader. You follow what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And so for me, I'm thinking, well, that's not going to work, because I can't turn off. I'm hired in a leadership position, but you don't want me to be a leader. Okay, make it make sense to me, but I can't turn that off, you
Right.
know. And so the world of work is complicated. I think it's getting more complicated
Hmm.
from COVID, the pandemic. The workforce is aging.
Hmm.
Our younger generation, I like their audacity, right? Although some of it, may not be realistic, but I like their audacity about their quality of life and what they
Hmm.
want and expect out of work. And then, the baby boomers are transitioning out, and that knowledge base is
It's
is
leaving.
is
Brain
leaving. It
drain.
is. And so what I say is, it's their world.
Hmm.
If they're
Yeah,
going to design
absolutely.
it, they're going to design it the way that they want it. Now we should be there to help guide, right? Maybe influence, but they know, right? They know, what their future is looking like and what they want, right? And so it's just, we're all leaders. Somebody said, don't want, oh, who said don't want you to lead? But all of us are leaders. I talk about, when I train, this concept of everyday leadership. Everybody is leading and doing leadership things in their position,
Right.
period. Right
One of
now,
the things,
there's a hierarchy, but everybody is a leader in their position.
in one of the organizations I worked for, we did an offsite, and it was me and my team, and we were going at the end of the offsite, we were going to take a picture, And they were like, "You get in the front, you the leader." I said, "Mm-mm. When you're looking at a picture, nobody should be able to tell who the leader is. Just because you're the leader doesn't necessarily mean you have to be out front, right? Some a good leader knows how to follow, and so
Oh yes,
we have
and
to,
collaborate. And when I hire for my teams, I always, when HR or the president or whoever asks me, what are you looking for in
mm-hmm,
this assistant vice president or whatever? I said, I'm looking for smart people. I'm
right.
No, seriously. I'm looking for
Oh,
smart
for
people. I'm
sure.
looking for professionals who can come in and help me shape, right? Further
Hmm.
shape whatever it is that we're supposed to do, right? And then
Right.
once they come in, because I don't want to be the smartest person on the team, because my team knows some stuff I don't know, right? They can build some
Hmm.
relationships not be able to build. And I want them to fly. I want them to go and do that.
You want
And
them to feel like they have the autonomy to do that.
And then I can do what the leader is
Need to
supposed
do.
to do. Strategic, right? Be strategic, have those conversations, make sure that budget, we get what we need for our budget. So you cannot be intimidated. I'm like, oh, I need
Mm,
some, because I don't want to really think about all of it by myself.
right.
And so
No,
the
no.
level of self-confidence that oftentimes leaders don't have.
Don't have.
Leaders sometimes think that they're supposed to do it themselves. I'm like, no,
Absolutely.
it's collaborative. I know my role is collaborative, but I have these dynamic people on my team who are smart, brilliant, skilled, capable. Why would I hold them back
Right.
from going
Right.
to do? And so I've just had that philosophy. Now, a lot of people don't have that philosophy, but I do.
I certainly had that philosophy because I wasn't trying to do it all. I was already doing more than my fair share, so I was good. So I always wanted to have people around me who can take the ball and run with it, right? And if you need help, circle back, ask a few questions. I got you covered. We could talk about it, And I had a lot of Sharelle isms when I was in the workplace, and one of them
Mhm.
was I have a lot of great ideas, but not all my ideas are great. So if you have a great idea, you should share it because your idea might be better than my idea, even though my idea is great. And
Mhm.
so, and just because I have a great idea doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way we're gonna go. If you have a better idea, share it. I'm willing to follow.
Mhm.
Um, so the whole purpose of this episode 2 of Let's Get Into It is for us to really get into, what are we experiencing in the workplace and how are we advocating for ourselves? How can we connect with the messages that were delivered to us from Monique, from Fani, from Taraji, and countless others? Because I know working in organizations in 2024 is a challenge. And I'm so thankful that I don't have to deal with that right now in my life. I don't know what to do. I and
Because you're
and one
retired.
Yeah, because I'm retired. And because one of the things I realized after I retired, I didn't know how much stress I was carrying when I was in the workplace. And it wasn't until I retired where I could just take a deep breath and let it all go. And it took me some months, right? To move beyond that period. And so I will say this to our audience. Take care of yourself. Know what your value is. Don't be afraid to tell others about your value and your worth, and then add tax to it. And so, with that being said, Sharron, I'm going to give you the last comment on that particular topic, and then I want to ask you to share one other thing.
Okay. So what I would say is, no matter what we're doing in life, whether it's the world of work and other relationships, we have to have a sense of self-love, self-esteem, and self-confidence.
Yes.
We just do. And I believe that when that is at the core of who you are and you work on those three areas, and of course with me, God in the center, right?
Oh, absolutely.
When you work on those, when you find yourself in challenging professional situations, you're not going to break.
Right.
Not going to break. So constantly work on yourself.
Yes.
And so that, as your career, gets to where you want it to be, when you find yourself up there alone, right? You find yourself up there
Mm,
challenging situations that you have built yourself up to say, I can do this. And then you're very clear about
mm-hmm.
what it is you will and will not accept. And Sharelle talked about fear, and now the fear is gone because I'm like, I know who I am. I love myself. I have high self-esteem.
Unconditionally.
Exactly. And some things I'm just not going to be involved in. And so, and then know your organization, know your HR rights.
Yes. Thank you. So, Sharron, before we let you go, can you share with the audience about your conference?
Yes, I'm so excited about it. We are having our 7th annual Woman Thou Art Great Women Sharpening Women Retreat. And the theme is preparing for greater, just what we're talking about here, right? You're preparing for greater. And it's going to be held on March the 22nd through the 24th at Hunt Valley, Maryland, at the Embassy Suites. Everything is on my Facebook page. But what I'm really excited about this year is that I was afforded a grant to bring 25 women to the conference free on Saturday, the 23rd. And we're going to engage in some career development activities. And the grant is for anyone who is unemployed, underemployed, transitioning work, your college students who are about to, go into these entry level jobs. And so, it's a broad perspective of women that this particular grant can accommodate. And so anyone that's interested, just go on my page on the flyer. There's a QR code, just scan it and fill out the application and share it with your network.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm the MC for the conference, so of course, I'm bringing it to you hot. So, Sharron, thank you for that. If
Oh,
you
this
all
is
can stay
great.
with me for a few more minutes, we're gonna talk about what the hell. So, in today's What the Hell segment, here's what I want to tell you or ask you. What the hell is going on in these streets with these guns? We have mass shootings every day in this country. We have kids killing kids. We have parents having to live without their children because of the guns. And we have politicians who are bought and paid for by the NRA. So, what the hell is that? So, they would rather get this money from the NRA than to pass sensible legislation to try and protect us from these guns. You can't go to the church. You can't go to the grocery store. You can't go to the park. You can't go to the Super Bowl parade. You can't go anywhere without having to worry about somebody pulling out a gun and just shooting. So when I ask myself, what the hell, I also have to ask myself, what's the solution? Here's the solution. The only way we're going to get some sensible gun legislation passed in this country is if we put those people in Congress, that's the House of Representatives and also the Senate, who will step up and pass this legislation. How do we do it? In the Senate, we need to have 2/3 Democrat. That's a supermajority. In the House, we have to have 290 Democrats as a supermajority to pass these kind of laws. And it is incumbent upon us to take our streets back. We can't rely on, the Democrats not having supermajorities, right? Because without the supermajorities, then the other side can, keep the shenanigans going and not participate in the process to try to keep our streets safe. And so, as you ask yourself, what the hell can I do to with uh, help the Democrats take supermajority in the House and the Senate, you can vote. Voting is very important. My daughter sent me something yesterday talking about how somebody called her work line and was complaining about her daughter getting an abortion because it was her first grandchild and blah, blah, blah. And so I said to my daughter, and this is the reason why I stress you all out to vote. So when you ask yourself, every time you see somebody getting shot, every time you see somebody getting killed, every time you out in the street and you got to keep your head on the swivel to make sure you and your family stay safe, just ask yourself, what the hell? Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of Let's Get Into It. I have a very special guest for next week, 2 weeks from now. The next episode of Let's Get Into It. I hope you will join me and enjoy my guest. Have a great night. Thank you for joining and participating in Let's Get Into It. I want to thank my special guest for being brave enough to get into it. Without you, these conversations cannot happen. Remember, different viewpoints, respect, and love are the foundations of Let's Get Into It. If there's a topic you think I should discuss, drop me a recommendation. If you're interested in being my special guest, let me know because we can and will get into it. Have a great day on purpose, and I look forward to your continued engagement and support as we get into it.